Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Em and welcome to my December 2024 wrap up. So I am woefully unprepared for this wrap up. I didn't prep hardly at all beforehand. If this is your first time catching one of my wrap ups, I do SMA. I do it SMA. Wow. I do it SMK style, also known as FMK, but I'm trying to not get my video like flagged for excessive swearing. I have a jar with all the books that I read in December in here, and I draw 3 at a time, and I pick which one I would smooch, which one I'll marry, and which one I will kill, and it's a fun time. But the only prep I've done is to put the things and the titles in the jar. I've done no other research. Okay, so I did read 20 books this month, which was great. For a while, I didn't think I would reach the 20. 20 is my baseline for how many books I tend to read in a month. Anything over 20 usually means I wasn't in a great place during that month. And yeah, I don't even know what it's like if I read less than 20. But for a while, I thought I was only going to read maybe 12 books in December because I chose to do a lot of other things in December besides read, like watch Arcane. My whole heart to Arcane. Of those 20 books, 13 of them were print, 6 of them were audio, and just 1 was an ebook, which is about right. I average about 1, maybe 2 ebooks a month. My average rating was a 3.91, which is a little low for me, but I read a couple books I really didn't like and a lot of meh books. That was kind of the theme for the month. I think this is the best I've done at reading authors of color in a couple of months. That percentage has been abysmally low since like August, but this month 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 50% were authors of color, which is great. Before we get into the SMK of it all, there are like 2 sets of books I want to talk about because I did make progress with 2 series in December. I completed a duology and I read 2 out of a trilogy, and book 3 is not out yet. So before we get into the SMK, I do want to talk about those series as a whole because otherwise I think it'll be really clunky if I just wait for them to come up organically. So I read the Hollow Crowns duology. It starts with Incendiary and it ends with Illusionary. These are by Zoraida Cordova. These are, did I say this, YA fantasy? And I've had this duology sitting on my TBR since 2020 when Incendiary came out. And I've just been putting it off and putting it off, and I put it off for too long. This series is about Renata, who lives in this kingdom where being a magic user is basically illegal, and she's part of this rebel group who is trying to free the magic people. Her particular type of magic, she is called a Robari, and she can pull people's memories from them, and then she keeps them. And once their memories are gone, like they can't get them back, she can't restore them, and she can drain people of their memories to the point where they become what is called a hollow, and they're basically a shell of a person, and they're still alive, but eventually, like, there's nothing there. So eventually the hollow does die. And so she has that trauma. And at the beginning, she is part of this rebel group, and she's very much considered an outcast in the group, but she does have this romance going with one of the leaders, and he is very quickly captured and executed by the prince, and Renata goes into the palace where she lived as a young child and tries to bring the kingdom down from the inside. So this is very much like a revolution story, and again, I should have loved this. I should have ate it up. The fact that I didn't is incredibly disappointing to me, but I think I just waited too long. I just waited too long, and maybe this was not the right time. Maybe if I read this at a different time of the year, I would love it more, but it ended up being just fine, which is a big old disappointment for me. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, I also read, is this called Only a Monster series? I think so, but I read Only a Monster and Never a Hero by Vanessa Len. Book 3 comes out later this year. I'm very excited for it, but this is also YA fantasy, and Only a Monster was a reread. I read it the year it came out and meant to continue and then just never got around to it. So I reread this so I could remember what happened, and then I started Never a Hero like right after. I read them back to back. And this is set in contemporary London, and our main character, oh, can I remember without looking? Joan. I did it. Our main character, Joan, it has always been told that her family are monsters, and she's never quite understood what that meant. And then one day she is on her way to a first date with this boy that she works with at a history museum, and she accidentally bumps into a neighbor and she touches the back of his neck accidentally, and she blinks, and when she opens her eyes, it has gone from being 9 in the morning to 10 o'clock at night. And she doesn't know what happened in those hours in between. This is another world where being a monster is very dangerous because monsters can time travel, but they can only time travel if they take time from humans. So take time off of a human's life. And Joan is a monster, and then there is a boy who is a hero and is sworn to hunt down all monsters. And I really love these two books so far. They're so fun. I love Joan. There's this like love triangle in this series, and like, hear me out, because I'm normally not a fan of I'm normally not a fan of love triangles, but Vanessa Len, like the way she writes the tension and the longing, like I genuinely do not know who I want her to be with. I kind of want her to be with both boys because I love both of them for different reasons. And it's just like it's the best example of a love triangle I've ever read. It's so good. So anyways, I wanted to touch on those before we got into it, just so, makes a little bit more sense. So with that, let's dive into the game. All right, first is Mapping the Interior by Stephen Graham Jones, Dinner for Vampires by Bethany Joy Lenz, and Volume 7 of Lore Olympus. Okay, this is actually kind of easy. I'm going to kill Mapping the Interior by Stephen Graham Jones. This is I'm not sure if it's like a long short story or a short novella. It's 88 pages, or at least my e-copy was 88 pages, but this is an older title of Stephen Graham Jones's that is being republished by Tor next year, and I got an advanced copy. And this is about Junior, who is recounting a time when he was 12 where the ghost of his father started wandering around their house and some scary things went down. And I've found that Stephen Graham Jones and I really get along well in a novel format. Every time I read one of his short fiction, it doesn't quite work for me. I normally really love his stream of consciousness writing style, but I have found in shorter works that stream of consciousness ends up feeling a little bit more choppy and almost staccato instead of flowing the way it does for me when I read something like My Heart is a Chainsaw or The Only Good Indians. And I have also discovered in this year that I do not like horror that has children as the main character. I think if you like Night of the Mannequin, you will probably like Mapping the Interior. I think I'm definitely in the unpopular opinion camp with not liking this book because I know for some other people, Mapping the Interior is one of their favorites. There is violence against dogs in this one, as there is in almost all of his books. I realized when I read this one, I was like, I don't think Stephen Graham Jones likes dogs very much, because I feel like the last 3 books of his that I've read, nothing good happens to the dogs. So heads up if that is a big no for you. It's not a big no for me, but I clocked it very specifically this time. I think I ended up giving this a 2. I was so ambivalent about what was happening to Junior and what the mystery, I guess, was of why his father was there and what the ghost of his father was doing. It also really plays with psychological horror, which I've also realized this last year is not my thing. You're always waffling back and forth between whether or not the things that are happening are actually happening or whether Junior is hallucinating, making it up, seeing things that aren't actually there. And I don't love that. That's not for me. That's not my vibe. I feel like I always have this up. Just a touch too high. Okay, so We're gonna kill mapping the interior. I think I'll smooch Dinner for Vampires. This was a memoir. Bethany Joy Lenz was an actress on One Tree Hill. She played Haley James Scott, which is one of my favorite characters. It was one of my favorite TV shows in high school and college. And this is about a little bit about the time when she was filming on One Tree Hill. It starts a little bit before she gets cast in the role and ends a year or two after the show ended, and the show ran for like 8 or 9 years. It was on for a long time. So it's a little bit about her experiences on the show, but it's mostly about the cult that she was in while she was on the show. And it was very interesting, very vulnerable. I really enjoyed the audiobook. If you don't like a dramatic audiobook experience, I would maybe say skip the audiobook. If that's not your thing, I do like a more dramatic audiobook experience. Like, I like sound effects, I like voices, I like when it's a production. So that really worked for me, but I understand not everybody likes that. But this was really easy to listen to. It's pretty short, and it was kind of sad. I said this in the video where I read it, but I know from listening to interviews from other actors that the filming experience on One Tree Hill wasn't great, especially for the younger cast members and especially for the younger women cast members. There was a lot of coercion and manipulation and gaslighting from the creators and headrunners of the show. And that on top of what was going on in the cult for Bethany Joy Lenz at the time, and what was going on with her marriage, because her marriage was a product of her being in the cult. And so it always makes me sad when I hear that people who created a thing that I really love did not have a good time making something that I really love. So that's always hard and makes me sad. But I really appreciate her being vulnerable enough to share her story like that. I know that can't have been easy. And then I am going to marry Lore Olympus Volume 7. This is the most recent installment. This is a Hades and Persephone retelling, and I love this one. This might be my favorite out of all the volumes so far. I felt like we got a lot of forward momentum in Hades and Persephone's relationship. They really communicated with each other well in this. They grew to trust each other a little bit more, have a little bit more emotional intimacy with each other, and also things were happening. Sometimes this series can feel a little episodic and like it's a series of vignettes rather than a forward-moving plot. And in this volume, we had a forward-moving plot, and it was so good. Also, the ending for this is just mean. It was so mean. It was a total, complete cliffhanger. It wasn't even a cliffhanger. It was just like the cliff got cut in half, and we fell off the cliff. It was that kind of ending. So I'm eagerly anticipating Volume 8, which comes out later this year, because I just have to know what's going to happen next. All right, up next we have Most Wonderful, which I had to send back to the library because somebody wanted it. Corporate Mandated Holiday Romance. And The Story of Silence. This is actually one that's going to be kind of easy too. I'm going to kill The Story of Silence by Alex Myers. I thought when I bought this that this was going to be, well, it says The Story of Silence, the tale of a non-binary knight finding the courage to be who they are. And it's published by Harper Voyager, so I thought this was going to be magical, like fantasy. Maybe cozy fantasy, maybe high fantasy. I wasn't really sure. But I thought there was going to be like magic in it. Think like Alana by Tamora Pierce is what I thought I was getting myself into. The magic component in this book is so slight that I basically got duped into reading historical fiction set in medieval time period. And when I tell you, I find the medieval time period the least interesting out of all the times in the past that I could read about. I find it so boring. I couldn't care less about the medieval time period. So that was my bad, I guess. I should have done more research, I suppose. This is set several years after the reign of King Arthur, to the point where King Arthur is no longer on the throne, but Merlin is very much still a figure and is known as being a prophet. So Merlin, the existence of Merlin, is the only magic in this book. I also think, like, while this says it's about a tale of a non-binary knight, for 95% of the book, Silence is a boy. Silence thinks of himself as a boy and uses he, him pronouns and is a boy. I thought this book was just fine. Which has more to do with the medieval stuff than anything else. But we start before Silence is born, and the king makes this decree that Silence's father and mother can only keep the land if their child is a boy. And so when Silence is born and not a boy, they decide to lie and raise Silence as a boy. So it's for like political reasons, but then Silence's mother dies and their father is never quite comfortable with the fabrication of Silence being a boy, and so sends Silence away. And we basically follow Silence as they grow up and become a knight and travel throughout the countryside. And then there's a part at the end where the tone shifts so dramatically, and what was like a fairly cozy, quiet book becomes very violent, and it was just such a hard right turn that I ended up not liking this book very much, just based off the ending, which is pretty normal. Like, I'm kind of an endings-based reader. I did not like it, and I will be unhauling it. Next, I guess I have to decide which holiday romance I liked more. I guess we'll smooch Corporate Mandated Holiday Romance by Nellie Wilson. This is about Brooklyn, who lives in LA and gets her dream job working for this company where the CEO is supposed to be philanthropic and care about the environment and doing all these do-gooder things that, if you know billionaires, they don't actually care about. And she quickly realizes that something fishy is going on, and she partners up with this journalist named Max to try to figure out what is going on and if any laws are being broken. And of course, this is during December, and so they, for very flimsy reasons, decide to fake date so that he can be her plus one at all these holiday activities that her job hosts. But Max is Jewish, and all the events are Christmas centered. And so it's like Brooklyn is teaching Max about Christmas traditions. I did have a good time with this. I thought this was fun. This is a little bit like how to be a good friend to your Jewish friends 101. A little bit. But I really liked Max. I liked Brooklyn. I thought the pairing up to bring down the billionaire was a fun concept, and I liked that it wasn't aggressively Christmassy. And then I Will Marry Most Wonderful by Georgia Clark. This is another Christmas romance. This is following 3 different siblings as they go home to spend Christmas with their mother. They're all adults, and it's a different romance for each one, and they are all queer romances, which I loved. I feel like my favorite part of this book was the family dynamics and the relationship between the siblings. We have Liz, who is a showrunner for a very popular TV show, and she has a romance with the star of her TV show, and I liked that one the best. I thought that one was the most fleshed out. That was the one where I feel like we got actual like resolution with the romance, and that one actually like more closely fulfills like the HEA requirement of a romance novel. And then there is Raffi, who I think is the youngest, and he has, his trope is best friends to lovers. And then, oh, what's the other sister's name? Birdie. And Birdie is a failing comedian, and she has a romance with a artist that she meets when she accidentally pours wine on the artist's painting. Watch out for the secondhand embarrassment with this one. It was rough in a couple places, but this one definitely has a lot of like cozy Christmas vibes. Like I said, I really enjoyed the family dynamic and the relationships of all the siblings and how close they were. I thought that part was the strongest. Following 3 different romances in like a barely 400-page romance book did feel a little bit overwhelming, and I kind of wish we had maybe only had one romance to follow, or maybe we had just followed siblings and we didn't need the romance. Just a thought. All right, moving on, because I feel like I'm talking too much. I need to be a little bit more more succinct. Oh, all right, we have I'm Not Hungry, But I Could Eat by Christopher Gonzalez. Her Body and Other Parties by Carmen Maria Machado. And this one's so silly. Killer Underwear Invasion by Elise Gravel. Okay. I am going to kill I'm Not Hungry, But I Could Eat. This is a collection of short stories Each one is about a gay or bi Puerto Rican man navigating life, romance, one-night stands, breakups, and it was just not for me. It was just not for me. I am not a gay or bi Puerto Rican man, and I feel like that's the audience that this was very much written for. I just can't relate. I was not the audience for it. I also went into this with incorrect expectations. I thought this was going to be a food memoir by a chef. Imagine my surprise when that's not what it was. So my bad, my fault. I will try to read synopses before I pick up books. It's the only promise I can make. And then I'm going to Smooch Killer Underwear Invasion. This is for children, and this is how to spot fake news, disinformation, and conspiracy theories. And it's great. Highly recommend for teaching internet literacy to children and how to be, what's the word I want? And how to think through things you see on the internet before you press share. Very important, as I have children who are like starting to go on the internet. So I really liked this. It was really fun. Highly recommend it if you have children in your life and you want to talk about how you can't believe everything you read on the internet. And then I'm Going to Marry Her Body and Other Parties by Carmen Maria Machado. Can you believe I read a short story collection that I actually liked? I'm not surprising though. I read In the Dream House a number of years ago and really, really loved it. So I had a feeling that if anybody was going to work for me, it was probably going to be Carmen Maria Machado. Now, my enjoyment and my engagement did wane as we went through, which I think just has to do with the nature of short stories and the way I struggle with them, and less to do with Carmen Maria Machado's writing. My favorite was the very first one. It is called The Husband Stitch. If you were also a fan of urban myths growing up, it's her retelling of the story of the woman that has the ribbon tied around her throat, and her husband always asks like why she has the ribbon. If you know what I'm talking about, then you know how that ends. But that was my favorite, though I found enjoyable things about each of them. My least favorite was the one in the middle. It's called Especially Heinous, where the story is told as like Law and Order SVU episode synopses, which started off really interesting but like lost, like it just went on for too long. Went on for too long and it lost its charm fairly quickly for me. I think if it had been a little bit shorter, I would have really liked it. But in general, I really like her writing. It's very cool. It's weird, but it's very cool. All right, our next trio is Never a Hero, Stunt Boy in the Meantime by Jason Reynolds, and Illusionary by Zoraida Cordova. I always think I'm going to be so quick with these videos and then I'm talking for forever. Anyways, let's start with kill. I guess I'm going to kill, well, yeah, I mean, only because of the books that it's paired with. But I guess I'm going to kill Illusionary by Zoraida Cordova. I mean, like I kind of said at the beginning, I've already talked about this duology quite a bit, but I just did not get sucked into this the way I wanted to. I do think I enjoyed the second one a little bit more. I like the romance that's in here. I love that it's an age-appropriate YA romantasy. I think that's great. I didn't love the epilogue. If you don't like babies and epilogues, just FYI, maybe skip this epilogue, because even Zoraida Cordova apparently cannot resist making the love interests have children. Also, this is a personal pet peeve, but the epilogue proves that Zoraida Cordova maybe doesn't understand how twins work. Just saying. But again, like, I don't know. There's nothing missing. I think Zoraida Cordova is a great author. I love her writing. I like her characters. I like her world building. I do not understand why I didn't eat this up while I was reading it. I wish I had loved it. I was expecting to feel about that one the way I felt when I read the Brooklyn Bruja series for the first time, which was stunning. Stunning urban contemporary urban fantasy. That's too many words. Just, it's amazing. You should all read the Brooklyn Bruja series if you haven't yet already. It's my favorite. Anyways, and then what were my other choices? I'm gonna smooch Stunt Boy in the Meantime. This is middle grade. This is a great mix of a traditional novel and a graphic novel. It is a chapter book, and it's about Portico, who lives in an apartment building in New York City and has anxiety. And to manage his anxiety, he has created a superhero, an alter ego superhero for himself called Stump Boy. And this is great. This is great. It's so colorful. It's so creative. It's so relatable for kids. The audiobook experience is amazing. I think any way you choose to consume this book will be a good time, whether you do audio or physical. This has like really great art and colors, and the illustrations are just so fun. But the audiobook has sound effects and music, and the narrator brings so much life to Jason Reynolds' words. It's just like 10 out of 10, no matter which way you choose to consume it. And then I will marry Never a Hero. Oh, this book broke my heart. I love Joan so much, and Joan is really put through it in this book. And I can't really tell you because it's the second book and it spoils what happens in Only a Monster, but there is so much longing and angst between Joan and the two boys in this book, and I just gobbled it up. My inner CW teen drama lover was in heaven the whole time. And there are high stakes. Nobody's safe. I do not trust Vanessa Lynn to keep my baby safe. I don't. I'm really nervous for the next book. I don't know what she's going to do. I don't know how she's going to wrap it up. I'm trusting that it's all going to work out because it is a YA fantasy, but also, I don't know. It could not. But absolutely fantastic YA series so far. I will, of course, let you know my final thoughts when book 3 comes out. All right, next up, I gotta go quicker. I gotta stop yapping. We have American Rapture by C.J. Lead, Immortal Longings by Chloe Gong, not my two favorite reads of the month in the same group, The 1619 Project. Okay, I'm so sorry. No disrespect to Nicole Hannah-Jones, but I'm gonna kill The 1619 Project. But this is really good. This is a collection of essays about the Black experience in the United States, starting in the year 1619 when the first enslaved Africans stepped foot on the shores of what would become the United States, all the way up to 2020, 2021, 400 years. It's an expansive history. So it's a mix of essays with poetry, short stories, fiction, reflections of some kind interspersed in between the essays, and usually reflect back on something that had been addressed in the essay. This is very comprehensive, very interesting, very educational. I do highly recommend this if you are looking to further educate yourself about United States history and its complete history, not just the bright, shiny parts of history. So sorry to kill it. It's just because of the group that it was in. Oh no. This is so hard. Okay. I'm going to smooch Immortal Longings by Chloe Gong. This is kind of like a futuristic urban fantasy set in this kingdom. There is a competition component. The magic system in this book is body jumping. So people are born with the ability to jump into bodies, and there's rules, but during this to the death competition, everything goes. No bad ideas in a brainstorm. So all the rules are gone, and we're following two people who are competing in this competition for different reasons, and they fall in love, and it's great, and it's super bloody, very violent, but I just loved the tension. The main characters, they're very, I wouldn't say enemies to lovers, but it's somewhere between rivals and enemies. They don't hate each other, but they are fully capable of killing each other at the beginning of the book. So I really love Chloe Gong's writing. I love the world building in this. I loved the action. The ending ruined me, and I can't wait to read book 2. This is also an Antony and Cleopatra retelling, but that's like one of the Shakespeare histories I haven't read and I don't have any knowledge or experience with, so I don't really know. Like, usually there's Easter eggs in her books if you've read the Shakespeare play, but you're not losing anything if you haven't engaged with that work in the past. So I will smooch that. Only reason it's not a marry, because American Rapture is also in this group. This is horror. It is apocalyptic horror. This is set in our world, contemporary times. Our main character is 16. I've forgotten her name though. And Sophie, and she has grown up in a very conservative, strictly religious family, and a virus starts to go through the United States that turns people into lust crazed creatures. So there's a lot of religious trauma. There is a lot of assault. This is a very violent book. This book made me cry. I've never read a horror that made me cry. But I grew to love Sophie so much, and the side characters in this book so much, that the ending just broke me. And it's a 5-star. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. Oh, I might have given it 4.5. Did I give it 4.5 or did I give it 5? If I gave it a 4.5, it's only because it took me a little while to get into it. I kind of debated DNFing it in the first 100 pages, and then the road trip aspect started, and I loved it. So good. Like, so good. But I found I really like books with religious trauma, so this kind of fit neatly into my wheelhouse of things that I like in horror. Next, we have Only a Monster by Vanessa Lynn. Witch Hat Atelier by, volume 12 by Komami Shirahama. And Little Weirds by Jenny Slate. So I'm going to kill Little Weirds by Jenny Slate. Not to be that girl, but Little Weirds was too weird for me. This is, I guess, kind of memoir. They're essays where Jenny Slate is reflecting on breakups and life events that she's had. But this feels like the most Enneagram 4 book that could ever exist, because it always feels like she's being weird. The weirdness never felt authentic. It felt like she was trying to see how weird she could be to provoke a response. And maybe that's not what her intention was, but that was how it felt to me. So this was not the type of weird that I could relate to or get into. It just felt like, what was the point? I have no experience. She's an actress and a comedian. I have no experience with any of her work. I don't have any relationship to her body of work. It just felt weird for the sake of being weird and not for any like authenticity or anything like that. Oh no, now this one's hard. I guess I'm gonna smooch Witch Hat Atelier. This is a manga series about a witch named Coco who is training and who is an apprentice under 2 other master witches and the 3 other girls that are apprenticing with her. This one was pretty high stakes. I think we're getting to the point where we're following too many POVs and they have split up, and so each part we spend with them, it's just so short that I never felt like we were making progress, but there was a lot of action and a lot of intense moments in this volume. And it was also a volume that kind of just ended instead of resolving in any way, shape, or form, which I sometimes don't love, but sometimes it works for me, and sometimes I'm unsatisfied, and this was one where I felt unsatisfied by that ending, so I'm looking forward to volume 13 coming out. And then I'm gonna marry Only a Monster by Vanessa Lynn. Are we surprised? No. So good. I won't talk anymore about it because I've already talked about it so much, but please read it because it's the best. All right, we have 2 books left. Hallelujah. I love you all. I'm so happy to do this, but I'm so tired of talking. All right, last we have Trust and Incendiary. So I will burn Incendiary, unfortunately. I already talked about it. We don't need to talk about it again, but just, I should have loved this, and I'm mad at myself. I'm not mad. I'm disappointed in myself for not loving it. And then I think I'm just gonna smooch Trust. I don't need to marry it. This is by Hernan Diaz. This won the Pulitzer this year? Last year? And it is such a cool concept and execution. Book is separated into 4 parts. And 1 is a novel, 2 is an autobiography, 3 is like a memoir or reflection, and 4 is journal entries. And the way they're interconnected is so interesting and so cool, and I really, really loved the project that this book took on and how masterfully it was executed and how easy it was to get invested in what was happening with these characters, even though they're separated in very big ways. It's just so cool. It's such a cool idea, such a cool concept. And I'm really glad I stopped being intimidated and I read it. All right, we did it. It's every book I read in December. It is Currently for me, it is January 2nd. I already started my 2025 reading. I am so excited for the new year, and I hopefully, when I do this wrap up in January, I'll have less meh books to talk about, because I felt like I read a lot of things, but unfortunately a lot of them were meh books. So we're going to try and fix that. I feel like the whole last quarter of 2024, I had a lot of meh books. So we're going to try and fix that in the new year. But I would love to hear your thoughts about any of these books, if you've read any of them, what you think, if I've inspired you to pick anything up. If you want to just leave an emoji, let me know you're here. Let's do a bird emoji. No reason. They just look cute. And like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll talk to y'all in the next one. Bye!